many challenges. And of course we can have conversations about this country's immigration laws and so forth, but there are times we have to go up higher to a compassionate human level. As that song spoke, it's what we all want, what we all need is kindness, compassion, concern. Even when the laws have to work themselves out, as our country approves of such laws, we still need to be kind. People are fearful, hurting, and stressed. And so I commission you this week, as I commission myself. Perhaps you don't feel called to enter a public protest or do particular things, but you can be kind. And wherever you go this week, when you go to shop at Costco or Cub or Fresh Time or go into a store or whatever, carry a little prayer of kindness in your heart. Bring that into a public setting. You don't have to say words out loud. You don't have to kneel and pray in a formal sense, but just hold in your heart that it's tender times, frightening times for many people, and you can hold them in your heart. You can see in them the face of God. Because when we come together, acknowledging the truth of who we are, as we did in our community prayer, then it helps. It forms a balm for the hard times that many people are having to deal with these days, regardless of your political choices. You can be kind, and I ask you to be kind. And these times inspired me, beginning today and for the next 2 weeks, to do a series of lessons that I call confident living. Today we observe, with the federal holiday tomorrow, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and his phrase, "I have a dream." And I add, I have a dream and I bring it to life. Next week we'll consider the co-founder of Unity, Charles Fillmore, who could have said, "I have a prayer and I follow it." And on February 7th, I'll conclude with inspiration from Dr. Rudolf Steiner, his many activities and works around the globe, still active this very day, for he said, "I have a vision and I act on it." Recently, in the Christmas nativity story that we shared and recalled, we remember Joseph and his dream recorded in the Gospel of Matthew. The angelic presence appeared in Joseph's dream and said, "Do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife." In other words, do not be afraid of the consequences of doing what is right. This is the essence of what I call soul courage. Soul courage. It's a challenge, a dream to achieve for every human being, to work toward good, or in other words, to go in the direction of God, without fear of what may result in the process. Jesus proclaimed this in his ministry in a nutshell we call the Sermon on the Mount, as he declared in the Beatitudes, "Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me," because of the inner truth, the higher wisdom. Let me recite a poem by Jonathan Stidall, a British filmmaker. entitled, "Thy Will Be Done." Perhaps that will, the will of God, it corresponds, or one day could, to how I act when the lives of others and our world's fate become for me of greater weight than all those cares about my life, success and wealth, rewards, acclaim, and aches that warn of my death. And such a thought makes clear to me that I exist, am truly me, to that extent that you and I stand not apart, but hand in hand to better world create. And so unfolds what wiser beings have hoped from the start, a harmony that's born of love, but slowly has to grow. Tomorrow is Martin Luther King Jr. Day, a national observation of the 97th birthday of this leader of moral imagination and social justice. More than 60 years ago, he spoke to an audience of nearly 250,000 people who had gathered in Washington, D.C. for a march for jobs and freedom. His speech, "I Have a Dream," has been read and studied by millions since then. I invite you to imagine that scene with me. On that August day in 1963, he began his prepared speech, a scholarly speech that was not attracting much attention from the crowd. A speech that addressed the problems and sufferings of America historically and up to the present day. Then Dr. King's favorite gospel singer, Mahalia Jackson, was nearby, and she shouted out directly to him, "Talk about the dream!" And it caused him to shift into a prophetic gear, boldly crying out, "I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have heard scholars characterize Dr. King as a moral witness. He called people to a higher vision. Traditionally, our unity churches have avoided political sermons. But at times of political conflict, I'm reminded of Charles Fillmore's words to unity audiences. He said, "We strive to find the spiritual reality behind all things." He and Myrtle Fillmore did not shy away of speaking of their political beliefs and choices. They just remembered everyone's freedom to follow their own inner guide. So as we consider the political challenges in Dr. King's time, and he found inspiration in our founder's Constitution and President Lincoln's leadership during the Civil War, and now we have grave concerns for our democracy in our very day. And we would do well to ask ourselves, is the dream still alive? Do we still cherish it, protect it, and work for its ever greater, truer expression in the lives of all Americans? Dr. King described his dream. He proclaimed it to be our hope, everyone's hope, and I quote him, "This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out the mountain of despair and bring forth a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. John Paul Lederach, a professor emeritus from Notre Dame University, wrote, "The images of the recent past remain seared in our minds. While painful, they will not and should not be unseen, precisely because they help us look more carefully at what peers back at us from our national mirror as a people. We are not looking at a fringe few. We are gazing upon ourselves. I have noticed that across a wide and deeply divided political spectrum, most everyone seeks to speak for and protect the Constitution, almost as if our shared document is a victim. I would offer that the deeper causality lies with the loss of our basic social contract. We note its disappearance when toxic social dynamics spill into the mainstream of our collective life. Dehumanization replaces basic respect. Blame supplants responsibility, and violence is justified over dialogue. We also know from settings of armed conflict and from our own exemplars in this country who never stopped building the more perfect union that it is possible to reverse these present dynamics. We ask ourselves from a spiritual perspective, what is this perennial dream that continues to nudge our conscience? Perhaps is most concisely expressed by Jesus. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. Or in Dr. King's most simple statement, we cannot walk alone. Or the often heard motto during the intense time of the COVID pandemic, we're in this together. This perennial dream will return time and time again, and season after season, until its impulse guides all that we do and all that we are together. Many ancient prophets and contemporary moral witnesses will declare it by differing words and image, but it is the same divine dream. And one day, when we all dream it, spiritual potential will finally become spirit made manifest. Or as Charles Fillmore prophesied, eventually our world will be spiritualized. Or in the words of Jesus' master prayer, thy will become our will. And one day, when we all dream it, this will come to pass. But to dream, we must follow our dreams. Don led us in our community prayer with the fifth principle in unity. It seems like what we call in contemporary language a no-brainer, but you really need to focus on it. In unity, we say it is not enough to know higher spiritual principles. It's not enough to affirm them through a practice of prayer, not even to meditate upon them. We must live them. We must let them guide our actions as we live in this world together. If we miss that step, we have simply, through our affirmative prayers, done what Maria Nemeth calls a metaphysal. A metaphysal. I have a grand glimpse of the goodness of God and the possibilities for humanity, but I fizzle out. I don't live it. I don't let it guide my relationships with others and the choices and actions that I take in my daily living. I've just out the truth. Eric Butterworth gives it another image. He said, when you hold a prayer or an affirmative thought, and then you go out into your daily life and act in a way different from that prayer, that thought, you've just short-circuited your prayer. And we know what happens when we short-circuit an electrical circuit. Nothing happens. We just bypassed it. So our prayers, our thoughts, our words, and our actions need to be in harmony with one another, in integrity. And this is what great moral leaders, such as Dr. King, and those that I will speak of in the next 2 weeks, have called us to. And so let's take a moment and turn our attention within. I recall an ideal of this country, a grand ideal, perhaps never even thought in the history of humanity until the birth of our country. But it was not a one and done. It's a daily ongoing commitment. And it is in Latin, e pluribus unum, out of many, one. So I invite you to close your eyes if you choose. As we recognize this oneness, that we are in God's truth. As we sang earlier, thinking of one another, even the stranger we have not met, you are the face of God. We didn't point at others and say, oh, but you're not the face of God. This is a truth that we realize for ourselves and all others, or we don't get the idea of oneness or unity. We leave this beautiful sanctuary where we gather each week to hold the thoughts of God, the thoughts of who we really are as God's creation. And then as we go our separate ways, back to the many lives, we leave this sanctuary with the beautiful window above us saying, we behold the Christ in you. And who is this you? It's all of us. It's all of us. We do not believe that Jesus, guided by the Christ mind, meant to say the kingdom of God is within you and only you, and not this person and not this person, but only that person. No. The kingdom of God, in the Aramaic language that he spoke, is within and among. e pluribus, out of many. Unum, one. As we hold this principle of unity or oneness, that we are one as God's creation, it empowers us to meet the difficult choices and the struggles that many are going through. We have power in our gathering. We have power when we recognize we are one because the life of God is breathing through all of us. Again, in Jesus' beautiful language of Aramaic, breath, breath, breath is the same word as spirit, ruha, ruha. They understood that the breath of God was breathing through all, making us one, even when we don't get along. E pluribus, unum. Now I invite you to allow your attention to return to the outer world, to this beautiful sanctuary, to our activities after this service, and open your eyes and follow the old unity practice and give a little thanks. Because every time you enter prayer, Charles Fillmore said, every time you think about God and the qualities of God, you are healed. You're brought back to your truth. So I'll talk about the dream, whether it is expressed as the great dream of America or the refining of that dream of civil rights or progress towards social justice, or the dream of the Fillmores that became our worldwide unity movement. It's all the same. A vision that we can do better, reach higher, demonstrate more of the good that is God in this earth. It's recorded in the book of Proverbs, where there is no vision, the people perish. We need this dream. We need this idea of unity to guide us forward into a peace, a health, a prosperity that can last and work for the whole world. Thanks be to God, who provides the foundation, the possibility, or as Myrtle Fillmore said, framed in our lobby for all to see, God has given you all the spiritual gifts and the intelligence to use those gifts. Get at it. Put it to work. That's our faith. That's our power to go forward in this world, despite any obstacles we perceive. So, as the Mother of Unity said, let's get at it. We can be kind.